Okay, Janet, thank you so much. And Misha, thank you so much for having me. And so nice. I also want to thank Stephanie and Alyssa. Love working with you guys. I'm so happy to be back. I'm just I want to get my face off here a second. Let me go to gallery so I can see all of you. Um, Gallery. Hang on. There we go. Gallery. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so what I thought I would do is I talked about this last time I was here about a month ago, and I know Misha, who's looking very very smart today. I know Misha has a lot of questions, and I hope a lot of you have questions about this question of body disposition. Body, that's what we call it. It's a very infelicitous phrase, but that's what we're talking about what to do with the body after you are dead. So, what I thought I would do is to quickly summarize the issues here. So I'll repeat a few of the things I said before, but so I'll talk for maybe 10, 12 minutes or something like that. And then I will open it up to questions. So please start thinking about questions that you might have. You can ask me anything. Okay, so the way we normally dispose of bodies, as you all know, is through conventional, what's called conventional burial, and through flame cremation. And I'm putting the word flame in there. I could use the word fire, but I'm putting that word in there, flame or fire, to distinguish it from something I'll talk about in a minute, which is water cremation or aquamation. I'll come back to that. So two ways we have normally are cremation, fire cremation, and conventional burial. These are very wasteful. These are very carbon intensive. They are very polluting. When you cremate a body at 1700 degrees Fahrenheit, you incinerate it in a crematory. I have one just up the road here from where I live at Pumphrey Funeral Home. When you do that, the mercury in the teeth fillings vaporizes. It's a filthy process. It's when you cremate a body, fire cremate a body, it's equivalent to driving over 500 miles in a car. So it's not a so that's the thing about both these ways we normally use to dispose of bodies. They're very polluting and carbon intensive, not environmentally not good. It's also expensive. It's also expensive. The average cost of a funeral is 10, 12, $14,000, whereas the cost for a green burial and aquamation and human composting, which I'll talk about in a minute, are closer down to $6,000 or $7,000. So it makes economic sense besides environmental sense. But just for a second to dwell on the normal way we dispose of bodies. Normally, with a conventional burial, you all know this, the body is embalmed. Back in Lincoln's day, arsenic was used. Back in 1865, when he was assassinated, and he had that 2,000-mile trip, so the America that could honor him all the way from Washington to Springfield. He was embalmed, and they used arsenic. Now we use formaldehyde, but there's still carcinogens. There is some development of non-carcinogenic embalming fluids, but that's not very common. So embalming is filthy, and of course the embalming fluids then leach when the body is buried. It leaches into the local soil. Okay, so that's what conventional is. You embalm it, and you put the body in a heavy casket with steel handles, and you bury it down 6 feet in a cement vault. The whole idea is ridiculous. The whole idea is to try and keep the body separated from the earth. It's not going to happen. The body is going to decompose. That coffin is the casket is eventually going to decompose itself, and so the body is eventually going to return to the earth. Okay, but anyway, and as I say, it's expensive. I mentioned this last time, I think, but last time I read that President Trump, for one of his wives, purchased a casket and spent $120,000 on the casket. That's because it was made of stainless steel and blah blah blah. That's ridiculous. And but even spending 12,000 is ridiculous. Anyway, but now the other way is cremation and fire cremation, and that is not good either. As I say, the body is heated, incinerated at 1600, 1700 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you're left with some bones. A cremulator is used to crush the bones to give the family the ashes. It's very carbon intensive and not good at all. Okay, so those are the way, and now 60% of the country chooses fire cremation. Isn't that amazing? 40 years ago it was 20%. Now it's 60%. And the Roman Catholic Church has lessened its opposition to it. Okay, so let's now go quickly to the three new ways of doing it. The first way is green burial. My wife and I, Gail and I, are going to be buried at Reflection Park, which is 40 acres of wild land just outside Silver Spring. All you'll see is a little plaque, a little flat plaque like this, flat on the ground, have our name on it and a quote, and that's it. Put in a biodegradable casket made of it. Well, maybe not even a casket. It could just be my body may just be in a shroud, and then or maybe a bamboo, a wicker basket, or something simple, and then buried down 3.5 feet where the microbial activity is most intense. No embalming, no cement burial vault, no heavy casket, nothing like that. And then over time, the body just decomposes. Okay, ashes to ashes. So that's green burial. It's how we used to bury people for eons. Back before the Civil War, somebody would die, they'd be laid out in the parlor. They'd be maybe washed, maybe not. But the neighbors would come. There'd be talk, tears, laughter, stories, and then the body would be put in a simple wooden casket, taken out and buried in the church crematory or in the family property. It was very, very simple. And so green burial is simply how we used to do it, and it's very good. Okay, now two other methods very quickly. One is human composting. Human composting, also called natural organic reduction, or NOR. And this is where the body is put in a stainless steel container surrounded by alfalfa and straw and wood chips. And over 4 to 6 weeks, it converts into rich soil. In fact, a lot of it, a cubic yard, weighs 600 pounds. With that, you can put under a tree, under roses. You can give it to a conservation group. You can put it even in a cemetery if you want. You can do whatever you like with it. But the body's converted to soil. It's lovely. It's peaceful. It cost about $7,000. Katrina Spade in Washington pioneered this. Now it's legal in about the last time I checked, about 15 states. We just made it legal in Maryland, where I live. I lobbied for that. Westmore signed the legislation. Facilities are being built here for human composting, and it's a lovely way to leave the earth without insulting it, without polluting it. The other way is water cremation. Archbishop Desmond Tutu did this. He was a fighter for against climate disruption, and so he wanted his body disposed of through aquamation, or alkaline hydrolysis. This is where the body is put in a container. It's surrounded by water. That water has 5% lye in it, and over 14 to 16 hours, the body decomposes. It decomposes, and it's very gentle. Maybe a little heat is added, but never goes up much, and it's very peaceful and gentle and lovely. And again, it's now legal in Maryland, and in more, and now legal. I think in last time I checked, 26 states. It's legal way of disposing of bodies. Water cremation, alkaline hydrolysis, they're all the same. It's all the same thing. Again, I'll highly recommend it. So now it is 2:13. So let me pause there because I would love to take any questions any of you have. You can ask me anything you like, or you may want me to clarify something, or talk a little more about one or other aspect of it, or anything like that. I'm happy to do anything. Misha, let me start with you.
Well, I think the main thing for me is, this it's such a fast changing field, right? I mean, there's regulations are changing, and what do you think going to happen in the future here? I mean, what are we expecting? I mean, I'm not planning on dying in the next couple of years, so I think I need to look further out there. But I definitely started seriously considering, different options. Um, so like composting seems to be something I'm leaning towards. What do you think regulatory wise? Like, is there any risk for this to go away? You think it's going to actually expand? So that's one.
So
And do you think
let,
that with expansion of all this, the prices are gonna and access is gonna become easier?
Okay, so let me ask the first question first. I think it's going to be fine. The regular is going to be fine. We are now creating I serve on the Office of Cemetery Affairs in Maryland. We license this process, and we're just finishing up the regulations now
Mhm.
for Maryland for water cremation and human composting. So I think the regulators will be fine. You asked me about the future. I think the future is that cremation is going to start to level off as more and more people learn about these new options, and gradually the amount of human composting and alkaline hydrolysis and green burial will rise. That's my forecast. It'll rise as people realize the savings in cost and the savings to the environment, and as they learn, how damaging a conventional burial and flame cremation is. So your first question about the future, it's going to change slowly. Nothing's going to happen
Mhm.
fast. But over the next 10, 15, 20 years, I anticipate, the uh, flame cremation has risen rapidly. As I say, 60% of people now choose it.
Mhm.
I think that will slowly level off and then slowly come down. It'll be replaced by these new methods. I think embalming is going to gradually decrease even more than it is now. So my forecast about the future, Misha, is that all these options will be available. I mean, I think in 50 years' time, people will be able to have a conventional embalmed if they want to. I think that all these things will still exist. But it'll be much more common to have a green burial, and to have or to use alkaline hydrolysis or NOR. I think those will become more common. To your second question about price, the prices are already very reasonable. I mean, Katrina Spade charges $7,000. Serenity Ridge, just like Baltimore, Green Burial Ground, charges, last time I checked, was about $7,000. Alkaline hydrolysis typically cost $7,000. It's true that these numbers are a bit higher than cremation, straight cremation. That usually costs, $3,000, $4,000. But we're talking about very reasonable amounts. Normally people are used to spending 10, 12, 14, $15,000. You're talking about, even these three new ways involve significant savings for the consumer, which makes them attractive. So my answer to your second question is that, I think it'll come, as it becomes more common, the price will lower. On the other hand, as the demand rises, that'll push the price up a bit. So there'll be a trade-off there. Not quite sure how it's going to work out, but it's going to stay, I think, a reasonable price that most consumers are going to be pretty happy with.
hmm hmm There is a lot of questions in the chat, so let's just go
Oh,
through
good. Oh, I
them.
didn't
I
see
don't
that.
want
Let me,
to,
let me,
yeah.
let me, so, yeah, let me go to the chat. Sorry. My apologies. Thank you. So, is Misha wearing a coat and tie? Yeah, okay.
All right, let's
Funny.
go to the Christina's growth. I think that's the first question there for you. So what happens to
Okay.
the fluid left from the water hydrolysis?
Okay. Okay. I will um, answer that question. Okay. So, okay. So Christina, thank you so much for this question. What happens to the fluid left from water hydrolysis, alkaline hydrolysis? The water is sterile. That liquid is sterile. So sterile, it's actually disposed of down the municipal wastewater system. Isn't that amazing? Poured
Hmm.
down the drain. It contains peptides and soaps and other very simple things. So it's not dangerous. It's sterile. It doesn't have to be disposed of in a in a special dump or anything like that. It's just it goes down the sink. So, Christina, I hope I answered that question. Please ask me more. Linda says, with water cremation, is any part of the body recoverable for the survivors to have or bury? Linda, thank you for that question. I apologize for not being clear about that. Yes, they have ashes. After the body goes through this process of water alkaline hydrolysis, you're left with a brittle skeleton. And a device called a cremulator, the same device we use in fire cremation, is used to crush the bones to produce the ashes, which are then given to the family, just like the family would get ashes from a fire cremation a disposal method. So the body, I mean, not the body you recognize, but the ashes are recoverable and to have and to bury. So, Linda, I hope I answered that question. But please ask me more if you have another follow-up question. Randall, thanks for your question. Randall says, Chris, can you compare the costs of the various methods you are describing? Yes. So I've done this already a little bit. Let me just summarize it again, Randall. And it's a good question. Thank you for asking. Fire cremation, it can be as low as $2,000, but typically $3,000 or $4,000. That's without any viewing or any fuss. You simply to the crematory and it's without any fuss or follow up or service anything like that. It's two, three, $4,000, so quite inexpensive. By the way, I should quickly mention, talking about costs, the most inexpensive way to dispose of your body is through giving it to a medical school like George Washington, where it's used where doctors use it for research, students use it
Not,
for.
not George Washington, no.
Okay,
Georgetown. GW
Georgetown.
doesn't accept the bodies. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Georgetown's most anyway. I just generalize to medical schools. A lot of medical schools will want bodies. They want cadaver on. My daughter Christina is a doctor, and she worked when she was trained at medical school. She used a cadaver. And that's zero cost basically. Okay, so back to your question, Randall. So we talked about fire cremation, quite inexpensive. Next one up would be a green burial. That's typically $6,000 with includes the service, everything. And then, or if you use a funeral home, you might have a little extra for a funeral home. So say 7 or 8,000 in total. Then water alkaline hydrolysis, that's typically about $7,000. And natural organic reduction, that's typically the same. Then you go to a conventional burial and with embalming, and that's more like 10, 12, 14,000 dollars. So Randall, I hope I'm answering your question. Please come back to me with more questions or follow-up questions if you have them. Jennifer, as between composting and alkaline hydrolysis, which is best environmentally and what are the relative costs? So the relative costs, Jennifer, are roughly the same, around about $7,000, roughly in that area. And best environmentally, I would say they're comparable. I would say they're comparable environment. You can compare them, in great detail. There are research papers which get in the weeds about the different aspects of these processes, because the people who favor alkaline hydrolysis complain that that people who do composting have to then use lorries and trucks to carry the soil out, and that's environmentally expensive. So you find there's some competition here, but so they're both, I would say, overall, they're pretty comparable in terms of environmental impact. Okay, so Jennifer, please ask me any follow-up questions there you want. Christina has another question. She said, I heard about a company that turns the body into a diamond. Have you heard of this? And what do you think? Well, I believe in autonomy. I believe in agency. If people want to do things like that, they should be allowed to. I mean, it's not, who am I to say no to that? If you want to turn you can take your ashes from either alkaline hydrolysis or from flame cremation. You take those ashes and convert them into a diamond. I've never heard of anybody converting a body direct into a diamond through some process. I think it's through cremation that you produce the ashes. Then the ashes are converted converted into a diamond. I'm guessing. I've heard of this. It's fine. I don't think I disapprove. I don't know how that is environmentally. I mean, better to be a diamond than taking out valuable space in a cemetery, just wasting that space, which could be used for better things. I don't think, Christian, I have many more thoughts than that. I do believe that I believe in patient directed care, and so if a patient wants their body after they die to be converted to diamond, I mean, it's I just don't know. I don't know enough about that process and what the environmental and cost trade-offs are. Okay, so thank you, Christina, for your question. Now, Randall, let's check the time by 2:24. We're doing great. Okay, now Randall says, I wonder if that means you can put the person on a ring and wear them. Yes, it does mean that. That's exactly what it does mean. And you put a smiley face, and I appreciate the humor, but in fact, I think that's exactly the purpose of it. Which is rather nice, rather nice. If my wife died, we've been married over 50 years. I'd be delighted to. I don't wear rings, but I'd be delighted if I did to have her on my finger. Okay, Cheryl Green. Cheryl says, "Do you know the names of companies who do all three of these three? I sat in on a webinar for human composting. I forgot the company's name. Okay, so let's deal with composting first. Earth Funeral is one name. They seem like a good company. I don't know them well, but Earth Funeral, you should Google it. Earth Funeral. They're in this area. The best known one is Katrina Spade's, which is called composting, or is it recomposting? Sorry, I can't. It may be recomposting or composting. Anyway, it's out in It's out in Washington, and you can have your body transported there, and they take bodies from all over the country. But obviously, most of the bodies they deal with are from in that area, in that region. So that's some names for NOR, for human composting. In terms of alkaline hydrolysis, the Willow Green company which is a very good company in this area, is developing facilities. Willow Green, read by Adrian, my friends Adrian Gardner and Lily Buckner. They're two wonderful people, and I highly recommend the Green Willow Company. They also do. They not only do human composting, but they also do water cremation. And then in terms of in terms of green burial, a very good one close to us in Silver Spring is where I'm going to be buried, is Reflection Park, run by my friend Basil. Basil and his wife Noma. They're terrific people, and highly recommend them. And the other place near us is in outside Baltimore. It's called Reflection, Serenity Ridge, run by my friend Howard Berg, and highly recommend them. That's very good. Oh, good. Someone here who is doing this. Oh, Stephanie. Stephanie, you are great. Look at Stephanie. She is so excellent. She is trying to capture all these websites. Well done, Stephanie. Gosh, terrific. Okay, going back to the questions. So I hope that Cheryl, I hope that's helpful. Feel free. By the way, Stephanie, would you be kind of put my email address in this here, so people can write to me, because some of you may want to write to me and say, what were those names again, or some of you may have questions that are too sensitive, too private to raise publicly here in this forum. Feel free to write to me. Everything I do is pro bono. I never charge for anything. All of money from my books goes to fund scholarships. But feel free to write to me if you have a question that you couldn't get answered today. I'm happy to help you with that. So Randall says, thank you. You're welcome, Randall. Linda, by the way, it's 2:28. So we'll finish up here. Linda says, do you know what forms of burial are allowed in Virginia? I don't live in Virginia, but I think I've not heard of any being banned there. So I think all of them are allowed. But what may be missing in Virginia is facilities. You may not have yet in Virginia. I'm guessing. I'm speculating. You may not yet have in Virginia a facility for human composting or a facility for alkaline hydrolysis. In which case you can go to a nearby state where they do have them. I mean, I know there's one in North Carolina, for example. But I think they are legally allowed. In Virginia, but I'd have to double check. I'm Linda, sorry not to have a firm answer for you on that. Christina says thank you. You're so welcome. And let's see. Shell says thank you. You are so welcome. There's my email address. And by the way, Stephanie, would you be kind and also put my website for people? It has lots of freebies on there, lots of handouts and all this subject. My email is chrispalmeronline.com. chrispalmeronline.com. Go to that, help yourself. Everything is free. I have about 30, 40 handouts on these types of subjects. Help yourself, and hope that is helpful. Linda has another question. If bodies travel across state lines, don't they have to be embalmed? What a good question, Linda. And off the top of my head, I don't know the answer. But you're raising a very good question, and we need to check that. I think the answer is sometimes they do. There may be some states with more progressive laws where they can be refrigerated and still cross state lines. But this again, I'm speculating. I don't have that information. On the top of my head. I do know that you are right that there are some states where they have to be embalmed. Maybe it's every state. I don't know. And we'd need to look that up. So, Linda, thank you for asking. Jennifer Lyman, legally, she says, legally, I expect this is a real moving target as states are going to change their rules according to changing norms and, Jennifer, according to changing laws. I mean, some states, human composting and alkaline hydrolysis are not yet legal. And so in those states, it's a moving target, as you say. And there's my website. Help yourself to that. It's 2:30. So I want to keep to the rules here. I know you guys have a lot to do. Misha has things to tell you about COVID, and then you're going to have your the so. But any final question before I say goodbye? It's been such a pleasure to be with all of you. Misha, did you have another question by any chance? Okay, he's
Well,
saying.
I do, but I want to yield the time for other things. And I think, Chris, when are you going to see you? We're going to see you back in a few months, I
Oh,
presume.
I hope so. Yes, we
So
will.
we'll hold more
Stephanie,
questions for you.
yeah, yeah, yes. Stephanie, Jad, and I will work out a time for me to come back. I love coming here. I love being with all of you. And thank you so much for having Misha. Thanks for having me. And Stephanie, bye bye to you. And Janet, thanks so much, all of you. Thank you so much for having me. See you soon. Take care. Bye bye
Bye,
bye.
Chris.
Yeah, bye bye now.
All right, let's do a little bit of a update. I have two quick updates. One is for, well, if you're not a coffee drinker, that's not very helpful for you. But if you are, there is a recent study showing understanding of why we've been suspecting that coffee it prolongs life. There's been multiple different studies suggesting that people who drink coffee on average live several years longer. There wasn't really significant clarity why, right? So we know, from very advanced amount of studies before that coffee cuts down risk of Parkinson and Alzheimer's by, between 5 to 10% risk gets cuts down if you drink 2 or 3 cups of coffee a day. But it wasn't really clear why is the longevity extended until now. So I'm putting the study into the chat if you're a geeks like me, and if you want to geek out what exactly is happening there when you drink a cup of coffee, you can take a look. I'm not going to give you details, but it's now understood that there's a specific pathway in prolonging life that's responds to polyphenols in coffee. And, there's a specific receptor where the polyphenols binds and basically induce effect that protects the cells against aging, particularly. So it's a molecular mechanism that's been discovered. The study is quite detailed. So if you're not interested in reading, by all means, don't bother. But it's nice to understand that. I'm generally really interested in studies like this when they can tell you mechanism of particular food impact on the system And so in case of coffee, we talked about coffee quite a bit several times. So I just want to quickly remind you, there are a few things you don't want to do with coffee, right? You don't want to drink non-organic coffee because coffee is heavily contaminated, just like teas. So try to stick with organic. How to brew it, it probably matters less. What matters is that you obviously try not to use plastic during brewing because you're going to get some of the microplastics, especially since you're going to be putting the hot water into whatever the method of brewing. So try to use stainless steel or glass. And those of you using espresso machines are perfectly fine if they're all there. Espressos typically are all metal. The water sits in a plastic tank in the back, but that's fine because the water in that hard plastic is not getting heat up. The heating element through the espresso comes when the water comes through. But I generally don't recommend using the drips because they're inside the plastic at high temperature. Often those drips used multiple times throughout the day. And so, even once it's dripped into the glass container, you're still dripping through the plastic at high temperatures. So, and then obviously the worst thing would be those Keurigs where you have everything plastic based. So try not to use those if you can. Frankly, probably the cheapest and the easiest way is French press in a glass or in a stainless steel would probably be the easiest, the safest, the cheapest. So anyway, so that's topic number one. I'm still going to put the topic of cannabis rescheduling back in the chat. So if you want to discuss this more, let me know. Ask the questions. I don't have any further updates after we're done today. Dr. Frame, Janet, myself, we are recording the more detailed podcast on rescheduling. So stay tuned once the podcast is out. Of course, we are going to let you all share it and you'll be able to listen to it. So that's a pretty second sizable thing that I wanted to mention. And last but not least, there was one other thing I wanted to cover today. Oh, so we are heading toward the tick time. Those of us who are on East Coast, if you're somewhere else and you don't have ticks, sorry, this is not for you. But the summer is basically nearing here. The ticks are out in full force, so do remember that. Begin to protect if you're walking out in the woods. You know my position. I don't recommend any sprays. I recommend you use protective clothing. And then when you get home, you take the clothing off and either you throw it in a washer or put them outside to air out and check your body. But just be more vigilant. Unfortunately, it looks like that there is an increased amount of tick bites this year. I don't exactly know why. You guys, there's a Washington Post article on this topic. And there's also more emergency room visits due to the tick bites. My presumption is that that has to do more with what particular organisms ticks carrying, and there's slight variations from year to year. So some organisms end up having more acute reactions. So I wanted to mention that. So let me pause here as usual, and let's do a little bit of Q&A. Remember, Q&A don't need to be about this topics. If there's something burning in your mind that you need to ask me, now is a good time. So I'm more efficient today since we have a reverse flow. Those of you who are here first time, usually we do health updates and the wellness topic first, and then we do the mind body. Today we had Chris do his thing, and usually he goes first just because he's timing, and then we'll do the mind body in a little bit. So a little bit of a different flow. All right. So it's Jennifer, I don't know if that's true. So I don't know if there's any method is more superior to the other in terms of how you do this. I think it really depends on a couple of things. It depends on how much caffeine you want to get, right? So when the water sits hot for a prolonged period of time in a particular area, you get more caffeine out into the solution. So if you want a stronger coffee, then the drip or the French press probably is, stronger that way. Espresso actually is supposed to be slightly less. But in terms of getting active ingredients, yeah, there's a lot of actual debate on that, from my understanding. that which method is the best. Probably the slowest drip would be the best. So like those methods where you pour the you hot water over like a paper filter without pressure, right? So that's supposed to be probably the most natural way of getting it, even better than French press or espresso for that matter. So yeah, so those are the interesting distinctions. All right, ticks don't die off in the winter. Yeah, so they don't die in the winter. They kind of in the winter they dormant. So like if you go into the woods in the winter, snow, no snow, it shouldn't matter. They're not gonna touch to you because they're just not moving. They're just sitting there. The moment the warm weather becomes steady, then they get activated. So then they'll come out from the wherever they're spending their winter, and they're starting to look for food, basically for us. We are the food, right? So yeah. They've probably already been out for a number of weeks. Usually they start coming out when the temperature gets steady above 50 degrees. So I presume that it's been now for quite a couple of weeks. Okay. Randall's asking a really important question about what's the immediate consequences. The most immediate consequence is not clinically relevant, so it's going to be all research based. If the moment cannabis legally moved to Schedule 3, let's say that I'm a NIH researcher and I'm not, but let's say I am. I would have a right to immediately look for federal funding for cannabis. So that is something that basically changed overnight. So now, of course, that means that they'll have to make grants available for the topic, and obviously that's going to take some time to evolve. But it also means that let's say that I'm a researcher and I have a grant, and it's going to be a lot easier for me now to go to my institution and say, oh, and by the way, I don't need to get the Schedule 1 control license anymore to do the research on this topic. Schedule 1 control license was really difficult process to obtain and very expensive and required a whole bunch of additional logistics. Like you had to have a specially set up access inside the research lab where it would be a special protection for the substance, which is way above and beyond of anything we typically do in clinical settings. So there were adaptations that had to be put in place, which are all going to disappear, and it's going to dramatically simplify the research. What will happen over a period of time will be very interesting to see. From legal perspective, Schedule 3 means physicians have a right to write you a prescription, and also you and physicians have a right to tell to the insurance you must pay for this because my doctor wrote, right? Or you will try to get it paid for. Now, currently, none of this is true because the system itself hasn't changed yet, but it will. So this hopefully will happen within the question is what is the time frame, months or years? It's hard to predict. At the moment, it doesn't change anything for you. So if you're, let's say, in state of Maryland, you want to obtain medical cannabis, the process is the same. You go to your doctor gives you a recommendation, you obtain a card from the state, and then you obtain the products from the standard dispensaries. Will this process change? I don't know. They may keep it the same way. They may simply say, the feds may say, yeah, just leave everything as is from medical cannabis side of things. Now, the other thing that's majorly going to change immediately, of course, there's going to be a big farmer who's going to say, wait a second, big pie here in the sky. Let's grab it. Let's grab as much of that pie as we can. So they're going to start producing isolates. So they're going to start producing drugs derived from cannabis and get FDA approval for specific indications. Of course, those things will go through the regular pharmacies and through the insurance. So that's gonna start happening very quickly again because it's much easier to do this now versus before. But again, because it's not something you can do overnight, tomorrow nothing will change. Again, we're looking at months and years down. Thanks. Great question. Okay. On average, how long does it take for symptoms to appear from Lyme disease? Oh, that's a great question. So that's hard to say. It may vary from few days to a few months. And it really depends on multitudes of things. For example, it depends whether or not you were bitten by a tick that carried a lot of Lyme. If there's very little, it may take a lot longer. So if the tick had a lot of Lyme inside, a lot of bacteria, then you actually may get symptoms like the classic bullseye rash. You may get that symptom very quickly. So Neuropathy is not very common. I think only minority of patients get neuropathic pain from Lyme, and that usually happens a bit longer. That's a more of a late side effect of the chronic Lyme rather than immediate. The most immediate acute events are, low-grade fever, joint swelling, joint pain, nighttime sweat. So kind of a more of a systemic symptoms. And of course, they often misinterpret it as something else. So that's one of the biggest problems is that the Lyme is a mimicker. It's a great mimicker, like syphilis. You can get all kinds of weird symptoms that can get misinterpreted, delaying diagnosis, which creates a big problem. That's why with Lyme, prevention is critically important. So, making sure whenever you're out and risking a tick bite, that you're trying to minimize the risk as much as you can. Okay, so Vashing's post article yesterday describing declining nutrition value. Yep, yep. Well, that's nothing new. I don't know why would they. I mean, we know about this forever and ever. This is actually, if you've read either my geriatric nutrition textbook or my main textbook, I have a whole chapter in both books on this topic, right? The nutritional values of foods have been dramatically declining in the last 100 years. This has mostly to do, by the way, with the quality of our soil. So the only parts of the country where that's not happening is either a small level gardening, when it's you're buying a food from your neighbor who's growing it in their backyard, Amish communities that have been farming in a standard natural way, the way they've been doing. And to some degree also what's called anthroposophical or biodynamic farming. So that's another level of farming where the soil is not necessarily much worse. But if you're buying most of the food from typical commercial sources, even if they're organic, it doesn't matter. Most of the soil has been gradually getting more depleted. That's why I'm such a big proponent of multivitamins after a certain age, because I do think that unfortunately, often we are depleted not because we not eating enough food, but because the food we're eating is not the same food people were eating 100, 150, 200 years ago. So that's a big thing to pay attention to. It's good that it's becoming more popular. This conversation is getting put out there in a wide. By the way, that's also why I'm a fan of farming at home. Doing, if you have a garden, if you have a capacity, even if you just have a balcony, putting a little garden bed right on a balcony and at least doing greens there, you actually can set that up a little bit better than what you're getting from commercial stores, because you can get a high quality soil easily at not a lot of cost, right? And then you can compost your own food. I want your own composting if you're doing that, and then use that. So we can take care of a small plot of land very gently and very good compared to what's typically happens in big agriculture. I don't know about hydroponic. I mean, it's a great, Linda, ask that question at some point when Dr. Frame's back. She's kind of our local expert, so she'd probably have a better answer. I just don't know how that comparing. I would presume that hydroponic is not going to be as good, because typically they would feed some pre-mixed food to the plant, and I don't think it'll be as good as when the plant is in natural soil, but I could be wrong. There may be some foods that are actually better off grown hydroponically, but I just don't know the answer to that. Still, yeah. So yeah. I don't think you guys need to worry about your particular type of making coffee as long as you're not using continuously plastic. I kind of just whatever. I mean, I sometimes we have espresso and then sometimes I use French press. I mean, I just whatever goes kind of person. But, that seems to be a very sticky point, like especially if you have European descent or European friends, they have very strong opinions on the matter. I, I mean, I started drinking coffee quite regularly when I was much older. Like, and Russians don't really drink a lot of coffee, believe it or not. They drink a lot of tea, particularly black tea, but not really coffee. I kind of started to really enjoy coffee when we really moved to espresso, partially because it's quick and there's certain, I don't know, I think everybody have you have your own ceremony around this, right? And so the smell and the sound and like that's sort of like don't talk to me, and the t-shirt, don't talk to me before I had my cup of coffee if you don't want to get upset. So like we all have this little ceremony in the morning after you got up. So all right. Okay, we have about 12 minutes. I think it's me today, right? Or Steph, or who's doing the mind body? Me, right?
You,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. All right, let's do something. I was gonna do something around death and dying, but we kind of did this last time when I was combined with Chris. So let's just do a little centering exercise, and then also we're gonna do a little specialized breath. First, let's just find our comfort. If you're sitting down, feel your feet on the ground, close your eyes. If you're laying down, then it doesn't really matter how you're going to do this. In terms of position, just be comfortable. Adjust the body. If you need to, take a few breaths to settle in. We haven't actually done elemental breath here for quite some time, so as a group. So let's do a little elemental breath. Some of you already have done it before with me. If not, just follow my voice. The practice is pretty simple. Feel the feet on the ground. We start with the earth. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose. On each inhale, bring the earth energy through the bottom of your feet into the base of your spine. If you're laying down, just feel the heels touching the floor or the bed and connect them into the earth. And then when you exhale, gently return the breath into the earth. And with exhale, release any physical impurities. Imagine that there's contaminants and toxins that live inside of us, and you're suggesting them to dissipate. Elemental breath is primarily purification breath. You welcome you to feel connected to the earth, feel the dense environment of the earth. Maybe even imagine you standing or laying down on the earth, fully touching with your back. Okay, let's take one more earth breath. And we'll move to the water. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Concentrate on the area around your belly button and imagine yourself being submerged in a body of water. Maybe it's your favorite lake. Maybe it's your bathtub or a shower. Just imagine the comfortable temperature of the water washing all over you, outside and inside. With each exhale, allow impurities of our liquid tissues, our blood, lymph, spinal fluid to be purified. Releasing anything that doesn't belong naturally inside our fluids. With each breath, try to relax a little bit deeper. Whether you're sitting or laying down, just sink into your seat or your bed. Sense body getting a little bit heavier. We'll do one more water breath. And let's transition to fire. Inhale through the mouth, exhale through the nose. Centering around area of our hearts. With each inhale, imagining that we're building the fire in our chests. Fire that burns any unneeded, unwanted, unwelcomed impressions, emotions. And on each exhale, we release the smoke and ashes of the emotional footprints that our system doesn't need. You can screen your heart for anything that's been pressing you, anything that's weighing on you, or anything you feel your system doesn't need any longer. And when you release it, just let the breath naturally to come back. Even if your heart is not fully settled, that's okay. Just stay with the breath for a few more breaths. Okay, let's do one more 5 breath. Moving to an air, in and out of the mouth, very gentle, very subtle. Still deep, just not forced. With air breath, we concentrate on our foreheads, we concentrate on our mind. You may want to screen your thinking, your mind for any intrusive thoughts that are not serving us well. Can release them. You know, my favorite comparison is when we were kids, we would lay on the grass, look at the clouds passing by. The same with our thoughts. Don't attach yourself to the process. Let the thoughts come and go as they please. Many of them are coming into our plane for various reasons. It doesn't mean we have to give them attention. We have to honor everything, just like every emotion has to be honored and welcomed. But we don't need to attach our attention for a prolonged period of time to any. Unless you really desire to, if there is a really positive mental construct you want to work with, by all means. But for the sake of the practice, stay more neutral, allow things to come and go. And maybe with that, your mental plane will quiet down and become passive and still. Unfortunately, our mental chatter is often interferes with lots of our balanced activities. So this part of the elemental breath is critical to give us a break from that. If you're gonna take on elemental breath regularly, you can always expand or contract any particular part of the practice. each breath doesn't have to be exactly same length as the one before or after. So if you want to spend extra minute on air breath because your mind has been busy, by all means, take extra time. With air breath, I like to check in with my head and my forehead and a jaw. Quite often, that's where I hold mental tension, overthinking things, or over paying attention to particular thoughts. So just be aware of that. If you found something particularly tense, spend extra couple of breaths on that area trying to release it. So just gentle refresh, gentle release. Okay, let's take one more air breath. And we'll do the last one, the ether, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. This part of the practice connects us to the greater, to the divine or nature, whatever greater means to you. So you can sense this relationship that each one of us has, purifying this bridge that's always there. Sufis always say that God is closer to ourselves than our jugular vein. So this practice, this last part of elemental breath is a reminder that this bridge, this connection is always there. Giving it a couple of breaths to purify it and to tune into the divine relationship is worth our time. Yeah, let's take last ether breath. And gently begin to come back. Let's close this. Let's just do a quick gathering technique. So just gently inhale, raise your hands up. Exhale, lower them slowly. 2 more times. And the last time. Well, great question, Linda, about podcasts with different breaths. I have a couple of breaths on our YouTube channel. I think we have a box breathing. We have the long version of elemental purification breath there. I don't know actually if we did a specific podcast on various breaths in one. That's a great suggestion, Linda. Let me think about this. I think we can bring a yoga teacher to do a couple of different techniques. Problem is though with the podcast without visuals, it's kind of hard to do, but it's still maybe something worth to consider. Janet, thanks so much for posting that. Ed's going to be with us next time. Ed's been on our channel multiple times. He's a Tai Chi master and martial arts coach. We love him. I'm sure that's what he's going to do. So we will welcome him next week. I presume that I'll be doing wellness since I haven't seen anything else in there. That must be me. And yeah. So again, if you're my patient, stick around if you have something from me. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week. And last reminder, if you don't forget about Fred's beating heart on Mondays. This is a week 20. And if you want to get them in time, you need to subscribe. So there is a link that Steph put. So just click on that. When you get to the YouTube channel, click subscribe. This way, every time on Monday when Fred, or is it Tuesday, whenever it gets actually put physically there, you will get a notice. That's how YouTube operates. So if you didn't subscribe, then things are going to be random there. Exactly. Thanks, Randall. Your body needs a good disposition. It's a good joke. I could make a really bad, cynical Russian joke, but I'll spare you. Um, well, I always felt that there's only one thing in Russian culture that I always admired is making a joke of anything. Like being capable of making a joke of any tough situation, it really helps you to move forward. So in some way, cynical jokes do have their role at times. But I like this one though, talking about disposition, and burials. This is a great one. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. And